Ahmad Wab, Panyaway Rostrum, Stand Up Face Jews. Blessing of Purim. Baruch atah Yahweh, B'Hashem, Yehoshua, Asherah, Natan Lanawa, Hakak, Pawarim, B'Shalawam, Thawada, Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh. In the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us Purim and peace. Thank you, so be it. The Aliyah Ma'ar Shariah Machat, Psalms 121. Y'all come and read everything. Anya Harayam Mayim Yimya Oh Harayam Mayan Yabawa Azariya Yabawa Mayawa Shamayam Warataza La Ginathan Lamawat Regalia Yela Yanawam Shashamarka Hanad La Yanawam Wala Yishan Shashamar Yashrala Yahweh Shamaria Yahweh Tazalia Ayo Ya Yim Yim Ya Yawamam Hashamash La Hakaya Wayarak La Balayala Yahweh Yashamaria Makab Rai Yashamar Napasha Yahweh Yashamar Hawalakya Wabawaya my fan wa I Walam Basham Yahushai Thawada Aman.
Psalm 121. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen.
Amen. Shema Yasharala, hero Israel. Shema Yasharala, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharala, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad. Shema Yasharala, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh, Echad.
Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Amen.
Amen. Fapala Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer. Abiyanawa Shabbat Shemayim Kodash Hayya Shanka Yahuwah Malakwaka Taba'a Ratazawanka Hayya Aisha Baratazam Kabashemayim Natamanawa Lacham Yawam Zad Wasalakla Kabawak Nawa Kasalak nawa, kabawaf yinawa, wala abiyar nawa, oh nasayawan, abo awashai nawa, murad, kaya laka, hamalakwa, wa ala, wa thapara, wa walam, maman.
Matthew 6:9. After this manner, therefore, pray, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen.
Amen. Ha'ai Matazawaf, the Ten Commandments. La Yahya La Lahayim Makhayim Al Panyab La Taisha La Paso Wala Taibadam La Talakwaka Shamwa Yahweh Alahayaka La Shawak Zakat Hayawam Hashabath La Kodashwa Kabad Abiyaka Wa Amaka La Taratazak La Thana'ab La Thaganab La Thainat Shakur La Thachamad Ko Asherah La Ra'ika Amen.
Exodus 20:2. I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in the heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, and visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gate. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and holiday. Honor thy father and thy mother, that their days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Amen.
Amen. Yeshabah, be seated. Barakatha Yahweh by Shimi Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Lana, Paria, Gapin, Tawada, Atman. La Yahweh by Shimi Yahweh Shai, Af, Yahshua. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel. Amadwa, Panyua, Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. Barakatha Yahweh, Haggadah, Rakawam, Abiyah, Wanawa'an, Aliyawan, Malak, Shamayim, Warataza, Wako, Dabarim, Kayayam, Wagam, Hamashiach, Mayahawa, Arawanawa, Ahabnawa, Apalab, Yawaitaza, Yahawashai, Zakarnawa, Yahawah, Bartazawan, Ainka, Yash'ala, Izarnawa, Banab, Wasa, Yash'ala, Oh, Nanawa, Yemyen, Aitha, Kayawumyam, Makwadam, Babakusha, Shalak, Mike Allah, Watazawadak, Alahayim, La, Maganawa, Rapharnawa, Washamat, Ilnawa, Bakwa, Shalak, Haruka, Shal, Yawashai, Lanawa, Lamadnawa, Rabiam, Kakamat, Tabawana, Water Earth, Shal, the Barka, Basham, Yahushai, the Water, the Yad, Why Willam, Amen. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, the great, merciful, mighty, terrible, most high power, King of heaven and earth and all things living, and also the anointed from Yahweh, our Lord, our friend, the wonderful counselor, Yahweh Shai. Remember us, Yahweh, favorably your people Israel. Help us build and gather Israel, most high, we beg you, right now, like the days of old. Please send Michael and the righteous powers to protect us, heal us, and watch over us. Mainly send the spirit of Yahweh Shai to us to teach us much wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of thy word. In the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you always and forever, so be it. Repeat the Hebrew only. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us the law. Barakatha Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Manawa, Hathawarah. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai that gives to us light to see. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Awar, Lara Awath. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the ram's horn to call the people. Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Asherah, Nathan Lanawa, Haran, Ha'ayah, La Korah, Ha'ain, Shabbat. You see that?
I'm just going to take it down a little bit. Okay.
No, it's not. It's not you. Oh, wait. The prophet told us in the report. You got any more publications?
No. Every come running attack, I find it's called the.
We about the sharp, baby, wait.
Yeah, people make that. You can buy them from CVS, you can buy them from Walmart, you can buy them that anywhere. It's cheaper at Walmart.
All right, so Shalom Yasharala.
No.
All right, so Shalom everybody here in Philadelphia. Shalom everybody listening in on teleconference, and Shalom everybody watching on live stream. Welcome to High Shalom Kanas, or the Congregation of Israel, where we teach that the descendants of slaves and the indigenous peoples found in the Americas mainly, North Central, South America, and the Caribbean, make up the southern and northern kingdoms of the 12 tribes of Israel. And that we fall into a lower state, politically, economically, even religiously, because we broke the laws of God found in the Bible, given to us by Moses. And we come at this lower state that we fall into by turning back these commandments we broke by following Jesus Christ as our example. One way we do that is by keeping the high holy days and solemn days that we're supposed to remember. Important days that, had it not been for the sacrifices of few in Israel, we wouldn't be here as a nation today. So in a similar spirit as what we celebrated last night, remembering Judas, right, son of Mattathias of the house of Aaron, and him standing up for the case of our people, dealing with oppression at the hands of our enemies, the other nations. We're going to remember another Israelite by the name of Hadassah, more commonly known as Esther, and her uncle Mordecai, and their brave, valiant acts, and why they stood up against what? A common enemy of the Gentiles once again, but during a different time period. This taking place a little bit before the time of when we remember the day of Judas. During the empire of the Persians and Medes, them being the dominant empire before the Greeks became the dominant empire in the earth. So the scriptures give us this history. So we're going to be reading the book of Esther, not only in what we call the 66 books, but also the book of Esther in the Apocrypha as well. I know we have a question about it a lot when we go through it, at least whoever's not going through the lesson. So in your notes, just take this down. It's going to go through the whole outline, but we're going to go through about half of the reading. Probably going to stop in the end of chapter 4. And then do the rest the following evening, since this is a feast that we keep for 2 nights. So get your pen and paper out. And as you start right at the top of your paper, that this is the first day of Esther that we're keeping. Or I should say Purim. And my name is Nabiaz Rebel. You can write that it's, according to the Gregorian calendar, February 16th, 2019. But according to the Hebrew calendar, it will be the 12th month and the 14th day. 14th day. So remember in last night's lesson, we read that it was the 12th month and the 13th day.
No, 15.
Mm-hmm. The order that you want to read Esther in as you go through it in the right sequence, because you have to go back and forth between the book of Esther that comes after Nehemiah and the one that's in the Apocrypha. We know it's all part of the King James, but we have to know how to read it in the sequence as we go through it. So first, you want to start off, and just put this in your notes, you want to start off, and a good way to write it too, just put like APOC in front of the Esther links I give you, or just put a letter A in front. That way you know when you go back to your notes and you read through the story in its entirety, which ones dealing with Esther in the Apocrypha versus Esther in 66 books. You could do that. Or just make it a way to go through, you know which one actually is in the Apocrypha. It's Esther, or EST, chapter 11. Esther chapter 11, verse 2 to 12.
Verses 2 to 12.
Mm-hmm. And then you want to go into Esther in the 66 books. I usually just write EST by itself to know that it's talking about Esther in the 66 books. When I refer to the Apocrypha, I just put an A in front and circle it. That's the way I do it. But like I said, do it the way where it's clearest for you. So now, just Esther, I'll call it a regular and Apocrypha Esther, just so that you guys know when I'm going from one to the other. So regular Esther, chapter 1, verse 1. All the way to 2 and 23.
Chapter 11, verse 2, 12, right?
Right.
That's in the Bible.
So you have those two, right?
What's the other one you say on
What was the other one in regular Esther?
Chapter 1, verse 1
chapter 1, verse 1,
to chapter 2 and verse 23.
chapter 2, chapter 1 to 1, and chapter 2 to 23.
Right. And that,
That's the regular.
right. Then Esther and the Apocrypha, chapter 12, verses 1 to 6. Esther and the Apocrypha, chapter 12, verses 1 to 6. Mm-hmm. Then just Esther, chapter 3, in verse 1. All the way to 3 and 13.
Chapter 3, verse 1, then you put from 3 to 13.
Right. So good so far?
Too good so far. Come.
So after that one, in the Apocrypha, Esther chapter 13, verses 1 to 7. So Esther chapter 13, verses 1 to 7. And then just Esther chapter 3, in verse 14. All the way to chapter 4, in verse 17.
Chapter 4, 17.
Mm-hmm.
Come.
And from there, Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 13, in verse 8. To 15 and 16. Rather, chapter 15, verse 16. So in the Apocrypha, Esther 13 and 8 to 15, verse 16. Then just Esther, not in the Apocrypha, in the 66 books, the regular one.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 5 and 1. All the way to ten and 3.
You say 5 and 1.
Yeah, the fifth chapter, Esther, all the way to the 10th chapter.
Right, which is where it stops in the King James in the 66.
Right, and we'll go to the 10th chapter. And third verse. The chapter 1, the 10th chapter. And then to, that'll be 10 and 3, right?
Mm-hmm. And Esther and the Apocrypha. You could write part of the 10th chapter, or just put part of the 10th, which is pretty much the when you go to the books of Esther and the Apocrypha, it's the first one. It's written in it's just written out. It's not a chapter. It just says part of the 10th chapter.
You put 10th chapter?
Just put part of the 10th.
Part of the 10th.
So when you go into the Apocrypha, you won't get confused.
I think you left piece out. That's in the Bible 501.
Mm-hmm.
You say all the way to 10.
Yeah, put 9. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. To the 10th chapter?
That's what you said.
Which part?
In the Apocrypha, the 16th chapter, didn't include the 16th chapter to go after the eight chapters of it.
Oh, yeah, I wrote it down. I totally didn't see it.
What is it?
Yeah. Wrote this in ink.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. So so it says 10 and 3, scratch that,
10 and 3?
and just put 8 and 12.
Is it Esther?
In the regular Esther that's in the 66 books.
Right. You put 8 and 12?
Right.
Okay.
And then after that, then put Esther and the Apocrypha, chapter 16 and 1.
Mm-hmm.
And how far down does that go?
124? That's in the Apocrypha, right?
Right.
16 and 124.
Right. I'll put this in pencil. Any other ones, or was that it? Okay. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I actually wrote it and didn't even see it. So after Esther 16 and 1 to 24, you can go in the Apocrypha. Then Esther chapter 8 and verse 13 to then, right, Esther 8 and 13 to 10 and 3.
I'm not sure the 8th chapter Esther to what?
verse 13. So then chapter 10, 2. To that, in the Apocrypha, where it starts off in the Apocrypha, part of the 10th chapter after the Greek. Right.
I got it.
Then you want to agree from Esther, part of the 10th, all the way to chapter 11 and verse 1.
Chapter 11. Reading chapter 11, verse 1.
That's in the Apocrypha. So let's go through them again from the top. So in the Apocrypha, it's in chapter 11, verses 2 to 12. Everyone have that?
Yeah.
Then Esther in the 66 books, chapter 1, verse 1 to 2 and 13.
Well, actually, you got chapters 1 to 23 or 13.
Chapter 1, verse 1 to chapter 2, verse 23.
Okay.
Then Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 12, verses 1 to 6. Chapter 3 and 1 to 3 and 13. Everybody has that? Then Esther in the Apocrypha 13, 1 to 7. Then Esther 3 and 14 to 4 and 17. Then Esther in the Apocrypha chapter 13, verse 8 to verse 15 and 16. Then Esther chapter 5 and 1 to chapter 8 and verse 12. Then Esther in the Apocrypha chapter 16, verses 1 to 24. Then Esther chapter 8 and 13 to 10 and 3. Then Esther in the Apocrypha, part of the 10th chapter, all the way to chapter 11 and verse 1. Say it again.
So this Esther,
Which one?
when you mentioned it was 10th chapter.
It's Esther, part of the 10th. And then you read that all the way to Esther 11 and 1. In the Apocrypha, Esther chapter 11, verses 2 to 12. One at the top of the list.
I was started with first.
Esther 11, verse 2. The first one.
I don't have my apocrypha. I got it in my apocrypha, but it doesn't say how to read it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's why I just went through it. That's why I just went through it. So the first one on your paper, you're gonna start in the Apocrypha, Esther chapter 11, verses 2 to 12. Then if we read that, then we go to Esther chapter 1, verse 1, and the King James, or the 66 books, as they say.
Mhm.
And we keep going from there.
Mhm. Back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do this every year, but I'm not sure we ever. If you go back to your notes, you'll see it. But I don't know if you would just know what to do after reading it.
This way, I think it's much better. No, this way I think it's much better. You went from the Apocrypha to the 66 books, you know? To both studying following both of them.
Right. So this is Esther chapter 11 and verse 2 in the Apocrypha.
Mhm.
Just does say come once you have it.
Okay.
Are you reading that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
All right. So good to go. All right. All right. So Esther chapter 12, rather chapter 11 and verse 2. It says that in the second year of the reign of Artaxerxes the Great, he was one of many rulers in Persia, in the Persian Medo Empire. In the first day of the month Nisan, which you read the scriptures, that's just the first day of the month, or I should say the first month of the year. It was also called Nisan. And this is in the Hebrew calendar in the spring. It says, Mordecai, son of Jairus, the son of Simei, the son of Kisai, of the tribe of Benjamin, had a dream. So we're seeing this brother having a dream who's of the tribe of Benjamin, this Mordecai. And you'll see it in the 66 books as Mordecai, but it's referring to the same person. Verse 3, it says, who was a Jew and dwelt in the city of Susa, a great man, being a servitor in the king's court.
Mhm.
So he's a Jew because he comes from the tribe of Benjamin.
Right.
We were called that around that time, Jews, especially those who had still remained in the southern region of Israel after the Assyrian captivity took the northern kingdom out of there. In the city of Susa, a great man. So Susa was the capital city of the Persians and the Medes. So it was like their top city. Like you had Rome and the Roman Empire being a top city. So every city has a capital. It says being a servitor in the king's court. So he had a nice position in the government of these Persians and Medes.
Mhm.
It says in verse 4, he was also one of the captives which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, carried from Jerusalem with Jeconias, king of Judea, and this was his dream. He was taken captive during the Babylonians who ruled right before the Persians and Medes came into power. So the captivities ran into each other. One group took us, and then when the other group came into power, the other group of heathens, they took us into their captivity. So the Babylonians had us first, then they lost power to Persians and Medes, and the Medes took us captivity from them.
Now, this would be the Medes captivity.
Right. Was going into him when he was younger. He was taken into captivity when the Babylonians first took us out. He's seeing these two captivities. It says in verse 5, behold, a noise of a tumult with thunder and earthquakes and uproar in the land. And behold, two great dragons came forth ready to fight. And their cry was great. And at their cry, all nations were prepared to battle, that they might fight against the righteous people. And lo, a day of darkness and obscurity, tribulation and anguish, affliction and great uproar upon the earth. And the whole righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own evils, and were ready to perish. Then they cried unto power, and upon their cry, as it were from a little fountain, was made a great flood, even much water. The light and the sun rose up, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the glorious. Now when Mordecai, who had seen his dream, and what God had determined to do, was awake, he bare this dream in mind, and until night, by all means, was desirous to know it. So this dream that he had and all these things that are happening, they all hold special meaning. As we go through this story, we're going to see what all these things mean. What the tumult is, the earthquakes, the uproar, the two great dragons, why they're fighting the righteous people in this dream, why the darkness and obscurity, etc., etc. Right. But all these things mean something. He's getting a vision of something that's going to come to pass before it happens. So we'll stop here. So now let's go to Esther in the 66 books, chapter 1 and verse 1. And hold this in Esther and the Apocrypha, because after we read a little bit, we're going to come back to the Apocrypha. Mm-hmm. So just say come once you have Esther 1 and 1. All right, so Esther chapter 1 and verse 1, it reads, now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus which reigned, so just another spelling of that same Artaxerxes, just being spelled a little bit differently here, but it's referring to that same ruler that ruled in the Medo-Persian Empire, just spelled differently from what we read in the Apocrypha. So we don't think it's somebody different. Mm-hmm. Which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 107 and 20 provinces. So you go into the history archaeology, they had a large empire, and it went from as far east as India, as far west as Ethiopia. So it stretched pretty far when you look on the map. It says in verse 2, that in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace. This is the same as Susa we read in the Apocrypha. It's spelled differently, referring to that top city. It's right. It says, in the third year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty, many days, even 180 days. Right? So he had a nice, long, extended banquet. 180 days. Anybody, how long is that? 84. Anybody else? 104 score days. And yesterday we did what a score was, right? It was a 3 score. So it's the same idea.
Yeah, I beat that.
There we go. Got a volunteer back there. 104 score.
Say it again, Navia, 100.
Uh,
4 scores.
Right.
That's 900.
Oh, yeah, that's my man.
900.
900. Go ahead.
This remind me of this thing online. W was the World Star Questions. And the lady was like, 15 minus something of you said 30, what you say, 47. So say it nice and loud.
180.
Uh,
180.
now how do you know he didn't? Now how do you know he didn't trick you? How do you know he didn't trick you? He could have told you something wrong.
I know. For 20 years. Sure.
Okay, here we go. That's how you do it. So 100, which is 100. Score, which is 20. 4 scores, 20 times 4. All right. Yes, let's not be bashful. I think we remember. We just might be a little nervous. No need to be nervous.
So, okay, what is it again? She just said
180.
180. Now, how did you get to 180 when she was just doing that?
A score is 20 years.
The score,
What score is 20 years?
it says 4 score. 4 and 5, 4 by 20. 80, okay, so 20 times 4.
Right.
All right.
Plus 100.
10 years, 100.
Okay.
So 180.
All right. Okay, thank you. We'll leave it in the next year. I mean, later on. Yeah, 180. Right, you're supposed to write down your notes, all right? You got notes down here. Right.
Right. But now, no, that's good.
Which I noticed though.
But let's just have some retention. That's all. So verse 5, and when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of blue, rather of red and blue and white and black and marble. So very lavish. And they gave them drinking vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. Then it says, also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged unto King Ahasuerus. So going into what he appointed to those of his leadership that he trusted, right? That they may enjoy themselves according to their will. And then his wife, Vashti, the queen, she made a feast for the women in the royal house too.
She made a feast.
She had like a special feast for the women also. Then it says in verse 10, on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus, the king. So mind the interesting names, because remember we're talking about the Medo-Persian Empire, so it's a different language. Verse 11, to bring Vashti the queen to before the king with the crown royal, or I should say crown royal, to show the people and the princess her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Wherefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. So he made a request for her to come, right? So she might be presented, and she didn't come, and it says he was mad about that. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. And the next unto him was Carnisha, Setha, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marcina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, in which sat the first in the kingdom. So his top people. 15. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she had not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? Then Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen have not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes. When it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. So the conclusion is a sound one. We can back it up with what the scriptures even say about this when it comes to anything, right? It may not have gone as far, but we know it's a general principle when you read the law that as a manner of the rulers, so are his officers, right?
What ways do you think the reason why she didn't come? Why she didn't come?
It doesn't say.
She just didn't come.
Yeah, it doesn't say why.
Yeah. I want to go.
So you could link this with 1 and 17. You can link this with Ecclesiasticus chapter 10. Of course, Ecclesiasticus is in which one? The 66 books or the Apocrypha? Ecclesiasticus. Both your brothers are correct. Chapter 10. In verse 2. Ecclesiasticus. Just write it down, I'll read it. So Ecclesiasticus chapter 10, in verse 2, it reads, As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. In what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. So it's not about what you present. You could even present, a picture of model behavior, right? As a real family or a top family or a top group. But if your reality is corruption, lies, deception, profanity, etc., it's going to manifest itself in your lower ranks, whether you like it or not. You can't fake the funk, even though nobody catches you or sees you with their eyes.
It will show up eventually.
Yep. This is something the Most High made sure he held to Israel as a standard, whereas other nations, you let them go for a little while, and them in their minds thinking that they're actually getting away with stuff, but they're not. Also, in Proverbs, you can write down Proverbs 29. Like I said, don't get it. Just write it down in your notes. To link with verse 20, verse 17. Proverbs 29 and verse 12. Which Proverbs 29 and 12, it reads, If a ruler hearken to lies, all his servants are wicked. So even if they're in ignorance to the lies that the ruler hearken unto, everything they say or do is going to be tainted by that lie that there's a superior hearkened unto or followed. 12. So let's go back to the book of Esther in the 66 books. Let's read on in verse 18.
18.
Mm-hmm. It reads in verse 18, likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes which have heard of the deed of the queen. Thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. 19. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him. Let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus. I'm back in Esther, chapter 1. I'm reading 19. I'll read 19 again. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before the king Ahasuerus. And let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. This is the conclusion they came to. It says in 20, and when the king decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great. We read 127 provinces, right? All the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. For he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people according to their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. Right? So this was the choice they made, right, to maintain that precedent. So let's continue on in verse 2. This is the stage is being set for something greater to happen next. So chapter 2 in verse 1, it reads, after these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what was decreed against him. Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, let there be fair young virgins sought for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young maidens unto Shushan the palace, to the house of the women, unto the custody of Hegi, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women, and let their things for purification be given them. It says, and let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti, and the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Right? So now there's going to be a contest of sorts, right?
Somebody else as the queen.
Right. So Persia, they say America's next top model, Persia's next top queen, right? So a contest. So let's continue on in verse 5. Now in Shushan the palace, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai. This is the same as Mordecai who had the dream we read about in Esther, that was in the Apocrypha, right? Chapter 11 going into chapter 12. The son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of Benjamin, who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. So that same brother. It says, and he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter. She had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful. Who Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took her for his own daughter. Right, so he raised her as his own after she became orphaned when her parents died. It says in verse 8, so it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Shushan. You see here virgins and maidens being used interchangeably. I think you were just going into that class, right? Where virgin doesn't always necessarily just mean woman who hasn't been married to a man. It just means a young woman, right? It has that definition too. It says, yeah, there we go. Were gathered together unto Shushan, the palace, to the custody of Hege, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hege, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet or right to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women. So the state is being set as far as her being set apart from the other contestants that they're grabbing up throughout Shushan. It says in verse 10, Esther had not showed her. It says in verse 10, Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So, given her appearance, we know she's beautiful to behold. But just like we see even today with certain Israel, sometimes you see Israel and you see people in general. Just by looking at them, you may not always be able to tell what's their nationality, right? You want to find out more, right?
Right.
Just based on their features, it's kind of tough to tell.
Sometimes you wouldn't just know.
Right. You're like, is that Ishmael? Are they Ham? Are they Israel? Are they, what are they? So Mordecai had to just keep it ambiguous. Verse 11, and Mordecai walked every day before the court of the woman's house, to know Esther did, and what should become of her. Right? So he wanted to keep up and find out and stay in tune as far as what was going on as far as her process and how everything was progressing along with the contest. Verse 12, now when every maid's turn was come to go to the king's Ahasuerus before that, she had been 12 months, according to the manner of the women. For so were the days of their purifications accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with sweet odors and with other things for the purifying of the women. So they got some serious spa treatment here, right? With herbs and, you name it.
She really beauty yourself up, huh?
Absolutely. So I tell you, it took them a year long for them to go through this entire process, right? This purification process with the herbs. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of the women unto the king's house. So they were given a certain object, right, or something that they could use as a means to, charm or to win the king's heart. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women, to the custody of Sheashgaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Right? Then it says, now on the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king. She required nothing but what Hegi, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. Right? So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. So she didn't think to take anything of, great precious or glory. She said, let me just take what my normal things and come as I am, right? No need to try to, outdo or impress, right? This is very important too, this choice that she's making, because it just shows her humility, right? As a woman of Israel, to where we know when it comes to righteousness in Israel, be it of the men or the women, when we have that forth and we shine that forth as our riches, the Most High is more than willing to what? Give us that what is even more important than riches, which is what? Get this link for 2 and 16. It's in Proverbs. So write in your notes. So write this in your notes for 2 and 16 of Esther. Actually, 2 and 15.
Proverbs.
So link this with Esther 2 and 15. Right, what we just read. Link it with.
Put that on the Bible side.
Right, so when you go back through your notes, you know why we connected it.
Actually, 2 and 16.
15. You could link it with Proverbs 22. Proverbs 22 in verse 1. You don't have to get it, just write it down. Proverbs 22 and 1, which reads, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. So having a good name and loving favor is more to be preferred than to gold and silver. So just by her choice, we see she's exercising that, right? She's exercising her good name. And the Most High, because of that good name, is now giving her that loving favor, as we're going to see as you read forward. So back in Esther 2, I'll read 17 and then continue on.
Where you at? The
No, back in 66 books.
Where you at? 2 and 17.
Right. And it reads, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins or young women, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti, after the year-long competition, right? Even slightly shy before that, right? She was in that 10th month of the purification process for the other contestants. She was found to be preferred above all others. This is the power of Yahweh, right? Working through those that seek him and that follow his righteous examples as she did. And as we're going to see, her uncle Mordecai did too. It says in 18, then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Esther had not yet showed her kindred nor her people, as Mordecai had charged her. For Esther did the commandment of Mordecai, like as when she was brought up with him, right? So still following the counsel of her father or her uncle, right? Her father figure, to not reveal what her nationality is, right?
Right.
And as you read on, we're going to see why this is going to become important later. And like the fact that it's not known, why it sets the stage for what takes place later.
Mm-hmm.
So all things work through the Most High, or work by way of the Most High, and He'll work His way through us in different means to say certain things and do others, so that His will can be manifest in the end. So in verse 21, it says, in those days while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains, Bigthan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore they were both hanged on a tree, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. Right? So he was in the right place at the right time. He heard some discussion going on, some conspiring, right, behind these two doormen, these guys being close to the king. And then he let word get to Esther so that she could foil the plot against the king's life, right?
That was the plan of taking life. Doing
Right. So this was just, another event. But of course, like anything else, they recorded it in their records. This plot on his life. But now, once again, the Most High is setting the stage because this little incident here is being recorded, being noted, but its significance is going to really manifest but later on in the story, that this went down at this time. So here, let's go to the Apocrypha. Let's go to Esther chapter 12. We're going to read 1 to 6.
chapter 12.
I'm going to read 1 to 6. Just say, come once you have it in the Apocrypha. So Esther 12 and 1, it says, and Mordecai took his rest in the court with Gabbatha and Thara, the two eunuchs of the king and keepers of the palace. And he heard their devices and searched out their purposes, and learned that they were about to lay hands upon Artaxerxes, the king, and so he certified the king of them. Then the king examined the two eunuchs, and after that they had confessed that they were strangled. So we said before that they were hung, but it's going to the same situation. And the king made a record of those things, and Mordecai also wrote thereof. So the king commanded Mordecai to serve in the court, and for this he rewarded him. Howbeit, Amon, the son of Amadaphus, the Agagite, who was in great honor with the king, sought to molest Mordecai and his people because of the two eunuchs of the king. So the plot thickens. Who's this other figure? Amon, the son of Amadaphus, the Agagite. This is who we see in the 66 books as Haman with the H, but it's referring to the same figure.
Yeah. Well, he was one of the doing this,
So he wasn't pleased by this plan being thwarted, because, like we read here, he was high up, but clearly he wanted power for himself, perhaps before the time, right? Or without it being, ushered unto him. But we're going to read about him too as the story goes on.
See that the first verse, the name says Gabbatha, Sarah, right? So we read Esther in the Bible, is Bigthan and Teresh, right? Top of it, you see it talks about the information that was never found in the Hebrew or the Chaldean. So sometimes when you get names, the names are referencing what the names are in those languages. Right? So the name that you may say in English, and then you say the same name, what it translated in Hebrew, it's saying totally different, but it's the same name, and it's talking about the same person. So as you read this, you want to think, well, hold on, it says Gabbatha. This got to be a different guy. It's not the same guy, it doesn't say the same name.
Yeah.
But it's just in different languages of the translation of that name. It's just referencing the same person.
Mm.
Even Haman, it says Haman, the son of Amadattus. When we read it in the Bible, we're going to see the son of a different name for the same person.
Right. Slightly different spelling. So back in Esther, the 66 books, chapter 3, verse 1, as you just said. Esther chapter 3 and verse 1, it reads, after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, or Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. You go into this Agagite, Haman, he's an Edomite, right? That comes out of a family called the Amalekites. His Agag, you go into his background, he was a ruler before of the family of Edomites called Amalekites. And he's famous when we read about when Saul was supposed to utterly destroy the Amalekites, but then he left some of them alive, including their king, and decided to leave the remains of the spoil for sacrifice instead of utterly destroying it. And Samuel was used by the Most High to judge Saul for that transgression. And we laugh at that scene, right? But we laugh, but we shake our head because it's unfortunate as far as Saul now having the Holy Spirit being taken from him. But we always laugh at how Samuel, in the thoroughness, finishes the job, you know. And you have this King Agag, this guy's ancestor, you know, make his statement. Surely the bitterness of death is past, right? Like mercy, you know. Samuel doesn't show mercy. And it says that he hewed him in pieces before the Most High there in that place. So, not to mention it, there's a law even for Amalek specifically. After we even fought them back in the time with Joshua and Moses, that we should rid them from under the heaven. So unfinished business. And here we got this guy who should be dead, really, but we have his descendant now becoming a thorn in our side because we didn't do what was supposed to be done years ago. So back in Esther 3, let's continue on. Okay. Say that a little louder. So Rebecca, write that down.
Genesis 36.
Genesis 36.
Chapter 36, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
And verse 9 through 12.
The water.
Genesis 36, say it again. Hands up.
Verse 1.
Verse 1.
And then verse 9 through 12.
Verse 9 to 36, 1 and 9 and 12.
All right, the water. And since I referred to it, I guess I'll just give it to you guys too. To connect with this, we could also link let's see here. Sorry. Had to write it down. So also go with 3 and 1 of Esther. This is 1 Samuel. Chapter 15. Same verse.
15, chapter 15. Yeah.
You can just write down verse 8. Where it tells you that this King Agag, that he was king of the Amalekites. Just to connect the dots. Yeah, 1 Samuel 15 and 8. That's it. One.
This is just to show who Agag was.
Right. So this is Esther 3 and 2 now. And it reads, and all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. To Mordecai amongst all the folks, he didn't bow down and give Haman reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgresseth thou the king's commandment? So they're asking him, how come you're not bowing down like everybody else is bowing down? As we read on, we're going to find out why he didn't. Now it came to pass when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, but they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand. For he had told them that he was a Jew. So here we go.
He didn't speak to him.
But they ran and told, right? We were talking about before tattletale, Oh, Haman, look, he didn't bow down to you. Everybody else bowed down, but he didn't. What's his people? He's a Jew.
The Jew, that's why he bowed.
So now reading on in verse 5, of course, I know we always laugh at that scene when he brought the Esther DVD. The guy was like, he was supposed to be the actor for Haman. He said, I want to speak to the Jew. Him. He does this real hard point at him. That one. Yeah, the guy was real vexed. But anyway, it says, when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone. But they had showed him the people of Mordecai, wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So, interesting.
Now, you want to get rid of all of them now.
Yeah. It couldn't have been a personal vendetta, right? Right? Which, that in of itself, we don't know if that's necessarily sound, right? It's not like he broke any law, right? It's not like he, stole something, right? He just didn't bow to him. He wasn't like, oh, the heck with him, he's nobody. He just didn't bow. Right? You see the direction that he's taking. And it's, I know it's not the same, but it's kind of made me think, I know they're talking about it with the actor who played in Taken, and in the Batman movie, Ra's al Ghul, where he was very open about a past experience, a friend of his being forced by a so-called black man, at least according to her testimony. And then him for days just want to go, was looking around trying to find, any black person that he could, to extract that vengeance on. As opposed to, let's actually find out who actually did it and then get justice. Because I think we all can relate to that feeling, right? Especially with somebody close to you, them being violated like that. But at the same time, you don't want to execute vengeance with violence. But, his testimony, it's kind of, people made a big thing of it because he's a celebrity, but we're no stranger to that type of mentality, right? That type of mob mentality when it comes to just something said about something we may have said or did, right? As so-called black men. And then this whole mob gets around. We have to get revenge to make sure that they understand, against all of them, the whole community. And then,
This is, to me, it's almost something similar to last night's events when Scripture said Nicanor bear deadly hate towards Israel. So if Haman had the same type spirit as Nicanor did, you got one of them who doesn't want to bow down. Like, all right, I hated them all anyway. Let's just get rid of them all. Right? So this was like, sometimes we do things based on having an excuse to do it.
Right.
Right. So this is not my excuse to
Get rid of them all.
get rid of them all. Oh, he's a Jew? This was the Jews did. All right.
Yes.
Get them all.
Perfect.
Right. Because just like they got rid of Vashti, it's a matter of high authority and being in the position that Mordecai is in the king's court. You have to abide by policies. So if you don't abide by policies of the high up, then that's going to be a disgrace to the whole nation. Because if they see that at the higher court and somebody is disrespecting the policy that is set, that we have a problem. So since it was him and the Jews, we have our own way of life. We just so happen to be in captivity around those people, and we were their subject, right? So being in their court, we're not gonna do what they want us to do because we still have our own way of dealing.
Right.
But at the same time, we their subject. So if we don't do what they do, that's gonna be us running against their own policy, right? Something had to give. So that's why they wanted to get rid of all the Jews, because if the Jews don't do it, then since he's over 127 provinces, then that can spread around.
Bang.
Right.
Come. So reading on in verse 7. In the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lot, before Ammon, from day to day, from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar, like we discussed last night when we read it in the Maccabees. And Ammon said unto king, so that's how we get the name Purim. Purim is just the plural for pur, or casting lots. It says, Ammon said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all peoples, like you brothers were just touching on. Now the state is being set as a temptation to not come against God's people, right? And then using Mordecai's response, or his lack thereof, as the catalyst. It says, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer or allow them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. So this request to destroy these people who clearly are upstarts, clearly rebellious against the powers that be, and I'm willing to put forth this amount or this price to get it done, which we also see too when it comes to oppressors, both then and now, willingness to spend even more than what might be deemed necessary in order to keep us down or keep us out, or to just take us out altogether. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. So another good verse we can use to show that the other nations are our enemy. Mm-hmm. And then this here is just highlighting that conflict. Then the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to me, the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Right? So he's one of his top people, so he trusts what he's doing. He trusts what he's saying. He doesn't take note of maybe there's an ulterior motive as far as what Haman's trying to do here. It says, then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month. And there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over their province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of the king Ahasuerus, it was written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. So let's see what that letter was. Let's see how it read. So let's go from here and let's go to Esther and the Apocrypha 13, 1-7. So Esther and the Apocrypha, chapter 13, we're going to read 1-7. All right, so it reads, sorry, I forgot to write something down here. All right, got it. Okay. The copy of the letters was this. The great king Artaxerxes writeth these things to the princes and governors that are under him from India unto Ethiopia, in 127 provinces. After that I became lord over many nations, and had dominion over the whole world, not lifting up with presumption of my authority, but carrying myself always with equity and mildness. I propose to settle my subjects continually in a quiet life, and making my kingdom peaceable, and open for passage to the utmost coast, to renew peace, which is desired of all men. Nice start. Sounds nice. Sounds like what Solomon actually did, right? Even his name meaning peaceable. Now, when I asked my counselors how this might be brought to pass, Ammon, that excellent in wisdom among us, was approved for his constant goodwill and steadfast fidelity, and had the honor of the second place in the kingdom, declared unto us that in all nations throughout the world there was scattered a certain malicious people that had laws contrary to all nations, and continually despised the commandments of kings, so as the uniting of our kingdoms, honorably intended by us, cannot go forward. So we see he's done the classic, like we might have seen in work in a workplace, or we went to school. You know, someone who may have it out for somebody else or want to get their way. Look at the letterhead, right, of the person who's in charge and say, yeah, so and so said, and then they write their own letter. That's what we got going on here. It says, seeing then we understand that this people alone is continually in opposition unto all men, differing in the strange manner of their laws, and evil affected to our state, working all the mischief they can, that our kingdom may not be firmly established. Right? So they're not gonna bow down, right? Like the others are gonna bow down to me, right? And of course, if they're gonna do it to me and I'm second in command, they're not gonna do it to you, King Artaxerxes. This is a problem. Therefore have we commanded that all they that are signified in writing unto you by Amen, who is ordained over the affairs, and is next unto us, shall all with their wives and children be utterly destroyed by the sword of their enemies, without all mercy and pity, the 14th day of the 12th month Adar of this present year, that they who of old and now are malicious may in one day with violence go into the grave, and so ever hereafter cause our affairs to be well settled and without trouble. So we'll just stop there. So that's the letter that he wrote, and we see he wants to most finally take care of the Jewish problem, right? And not just Mordecai himself, but the women, the children, the elderly, right? Take care of the whole nation, and then create this license to do so, as he's doing through this letter with the king's letterhead, so to speak, or as we see they call it the signet, right? To give the king's stamp of approval. So let's go back now to Esther in the 66. Let's continue on in Esther chapter 3. Let's read on in verse 14. So Esther 3 and 14 in the 66 books, it reads, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The posts went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace. And the king and Aman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. So the whole city seeing this letter, it's like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Of course, we know Jews reading this letter going to feel some kind of way. Even folks that weren't Jews probably reading this letter like, wow, really? Them? Of all people? I work with them, some work in my shop, or I might work in their shop. I got no qualms with them. They were this malicious people that were just lying in wait all this time. This is pretty strange, Some may have been reading going, yeah, I didn't like those Jews either. Yeah, I can get my licks off on them. Right? So all types of reactions we can imagine here with this announcement being made. So reading on in verse 4, when Mordecai perceived that all was done, Mordecai rent his clothes, put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry. And came even before the king's gate, and none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. Right? So he came there in not in proper form, but clearly we see the situation. Why? And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing. And many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So not just him. Many of our people were mourning after reading this, knowing that our lives were being sought out. So Esther's maid and her chamberlains came and told her Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Now word got back to her, and now she's finding out what's going on as far as this decree set against the Jews. So she sent raiment of clothing to her uncle Mordecai. It says he didn't receive it though, to comfort him. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai into the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, that the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. So now she's getting more detail into what's the cause of the situation is, as far as the story behind his letter and why it was written, right? And him putting a serious bid in against him. And he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree, which was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him and for her people. This was his response back. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. So I'm kind of having a back and forth because she's inside the palace and he's by the king's gate. So this is your, today we'll be like, oh my God, you believe they just sent out there? Oh man, it's crazy. Sin, right? You got people delivering the message, right? Back and forth. Old school. But communication nonetheless. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king, unto the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So she's giving him that a situation as far as, okay, I hear what you're saying, but here's what I'm up against. I can only go in there unless I'm summoned, and he has to put out the golden scepter. We haven't talked for a minute, so I'm not sure, what would happen. Then they told to Mordecai Esther's words. And Mordecai commanded to Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews, right?
Right.
So just putting this into remembrance in case you didn't remember, don't just think because you're in the king's court, the king's house, this judgment won't affect you being a Jew. Nobody knows that it won't come out.
Right.
Then he says, for if thou altogether hold thy peace at this time, then shall there enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So he's putting certain things in perspective that she may have not considered, right? As far as how the Most High's favor has been upon her and upon them, but how the Most High could be calling her to do this, right? It's not necessarily altogether clear if that's the case, right? Just putting this in mind so that she can think about it and consider and go, wow, okay, I am in a position where I have close access to the king. Perhaps this is the reason why I've made it this far and to this point, right? But what he said was really heavy, and it's something we just always have to consider too, when it comes to just this calling, whether it was then in their situation that they're in right there, or even now in these last days, right? Don't feel like the Most High had to call you into this truth. We need the Most High in Christ. We don't need them, right? We feel like, we're being, heavily burdened, or we just can't deal with the temptations, and, Most High's got us in our crosshairs, and, we begin to have animosity towards the Most High in Christ after going through certain things. Most High can take the spirit off of us and put it on some other brothers and sisters that are more diligent. That's his prerogative. He can do that, So keep that in mind for here and now, right? That many are called, few are chosen, right? No matter what we go through, we're still able to see who we are as a people, as individuals, that we're Israel, that we're God's chosen, that we have his favor upon us, you know, because without it, we wouldn't know that simple fact, that we just not take that lightly, you know, and we make the most of the blessing that we've been given to know this truth and to be called into this and to be given that opportunity, that chance to potentially be one of the 1/3, right? An honor that no man on this earth could ever give us.
It's like the situation that she's in is a tough spot, and Mordecai is in a tough spot. It's like when you're in a situation, sometimes you get pressured, so much pressure and so much stress, you don't even know what to do at this point. So it's kind of like somebody who's watching a game or watching a ball game. When you're outside, you see everything that you would have done. If it was you would have passed the ball to this guy, boom, you would have dunked, you know, oh man, I can't believe you missed that. Put you inside that court and see if you forget everything, all the play that the coach tell you to do. That's when, you know, you got to put things in perspective and then let the Most High guide you through faith in that direction. Right? So she's being put in, because being in the king's court, and they got their rules and it's strict. It's not like, you know, you do whatever you want. You gotta go by the codes.
Yep.
Right? And you can't just go and do whatever you want and you get killed right there in there, because that's the king you're dealing with. So that's why the Most High always reference kings, because they're supposed to symbolize somebody that's very powerful. You don't mess with like that.
So as we read in verse 14, he's giving it that food for thought, right? To consider this may be this situation where the Most High could use her to be a go-between, or to be a deliverer for the people who have this horrible law written against them. So now we're going to see the choice that she made, given the, as you touched on, you know, the tough situation that all of them are in, and how they are in, the two of them are in key positions to change or to turn the tide, if it be the Most High's will. It says, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. 16. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. Right? So she's done something very bold here, right? Very courageous here, right? As far as trusting in the Lord, that he could make it right, but she still has her and her maidens fasting, and she's saying that they do the same, that they may help give them a certain level of favor with the Most High, that he sees what they're trying to do, and that he fight on their behalf, right? That he sent his spirit down to help them get through this and to somehow address this this horrible fate that awaits them. And then, you know, it's just, like I said, it's a really heavy thing to say to yourself. You know, what would I do being in a situation like that? You know, would I put my own life on the line like that for the sake of my people, let alone my own life and what I could potentially lose? So once again, just speaking on her character, speaking on her uncle Mordecai's character, right? And why we read about them every year, right? Because they made the hardest choice. And this sets them apart and they're to be remembered because of it. So I'll read verse 17 and then we'll pick up next time. It says, so Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So now the play is underway. They're taking counsel, right? Righteous counsel. And they said, you know what, based on our situation, based on our options, let's try it this way. Let's hope that the Most High help us work through this and get through this and preserve the people. So as you read on, we'll read next time in the service. We'll go into the rest of the story and see what takes place and what manifests, and the challenges that are to come that they are looking forward to, that they're going to face as they face this annihilation. All right. So we'll pause here. We'll say Ashar Chag HaPurim, or Happy Feast of Purim. Yawam Achad, Day 1. Hopefully everybody was edified by the lesson this evening. Hopefully everybody got the list of verses in the order in which to read them in, so that the story reads in its right progression. That you can go through it and read through the rest, so that you can be more in tune, if you didn't already, when we read the second part tomorrow night, and ask any questions that you may have. So with that, I'll say it again, a short Chag HaPurim, and with that we'll do the closing prayers. Barakathe Hawa by Shimi Hawa Shai, Asharad from the Nile, Party Agapit, Tawada Aman. By Yahweh by Shimi Hawa Shai, Yashar. English translation. Blessed are you, Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, that gives to us the fruit of the vine. Thank you, so be it. To Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, with Israel.
keep hearing rumors about it. I haven't heard him say it or a politician. I've heard people who are not know. If you do that, a lot of people are going to end up
Start a war. We ain't gonna start a war.
We are, you just say, over.
When they were shut down last month, a lot of them couldn't even, a lot of the people that were going to food pantries, like they was on welfare or something, or on food stamps or something.
Yeah, man, something like for the government. She said, what kind of crazy thing to get her?
So they got up in the church, so I get up. Yeah, I went to a Sunday service. They got up there, yeah, man, I'll give you something. So they shut down. People got good jobs, going to the pantry.
The man, I'm gonna try it. We have a lot of 20, 30 people. Yeah, I know, we got a lot of people going. I think yeah. I mean, that's
Ahmad Wa, Panyawai Road, from State Street. Yahweh Basham Yahushai Babakushai Shamai Lanawe I fed Yem Yen I fed Shalak Mike Allah Walla Alahayim Tazwadakim Lashmar Ayo Barak Rapha Magan Wachazayak Banya Yashala Washalak Lanawa Rabium Kakamad Rabium Da'ai Rabium Bayanad Rabium Sabalanwat Rabium Amawan Rabium Aqua Rabium Mahabium Rabium Haganad Rachanaya Wasalak Ko Katayam Nawa La Akim La Akuat Wayashala Thamyad Waiwalam Basham Yehoshai for what man. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, please listen to us now. Right now, send Michael and the righteous powers to watch over, bless, heal, protect, and make strong the children of Israel, and send to us much wisdom. Much knowledge, much understanding, much patience, much faith, much brotherhood, much love, much spiritual protection, and forgive all our sins. For the brothers, sisters in Israel, always and forever, in the name of Yahweh Shai, thank you, so be it. Four Corners Prayer. Yahweh Basham Yahweh Shai Barak Nawe Wayashala Wabat Yasaparim Shema Yeshurele Yahweh Elohai Nawe Yahweh Achem. English translation. Yahweh, in the name of Yahweh Shai, bless us in Israel in the house of books. Then we said, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Prayer for the food. Yahweh, Gadawo, Basham, Gadawanya, Yahweh Shai, Babakushai, Barak, Mako Yanawa Shatayawa Yanawa Yayan Yanawa Lakham Yanawa Shakarat Yanawa Zakag Shab Hakag Pawarium Basham Yahweh the water Aman. All right, men circle up, sit down. So Shalom Yasharala, Shor Chag HaPawarium.